All right, let's step into the dark woods together for this explainer and uncover a chilling, genuinely suppressed chapter of human history. Now, when you think of a werewolf, your mind probably jumps straight to modern movies, right? You know, the special effects, the silver bullets, a curse triggered by a glowing full moon, the whole shebang. But what if I told you the true origins of this creature are vastly more unsettling? Today, we're going to bypass those modern pop culture tropes entirely. We're diving into historical texts, theological treatises, and ancient folklore from across the globe to see how, for centuries, the werewolf wasn't just a spooky campfire tale. It was a deeply ingrained, documented reality that spoke directly to humanity's most primal fears. So rather than treating it like some Hollywood invention, we really have to ask ourselves if this creature actually existed outside our collective imagination as a heavily documented medical and psychological terror. Our sources show that this belief wasn't just isolated to one superstitious little village. I mean, we're talking about ancient Arcadia in Greece, the shores of the Baltic Sea, the deep forests of the Americas. All these wildly different civilizations held this synchronized belief in human-to-beast metamorphosis, and they treated it as absolute terrifying fact. It was a very tangible threat that magistrates prosecuted, doctors desperately tried to cure, and everyday people dreaded the second the sun went down. To understand exactly how seriously this was taken, listen to this account from Gervase of Tilbury, who was a 13th century judge and statesman. Pay attention to his phrasing here. We have seen frequently, not we've heard stories or rumor has it. He says we have seen. Men of incredibly high education and legal standing firmly believe this. He notes that the English called them werewolf, while the French called them gerolfi. This one sentence is absolutely crucial, because it proves that across multiple societies, this phenomenon was an accepted part of the natural and supernatural ecosystem of the Middle Ages. Section 1. Shadows of Ancient History. Okay, so historically, ancient historians and physicians actually used highly specific terms to diagnose this horrific blending of human and beast. Pliny the Elder and other ancient Romans used the word versipels, which literally translates to skin shifters, describing people who could alter their outer physical form. Later on, medical writers started categorizing lycanthropy not just as dark magic, but as a severe, profound form of melancholy. Essentially, a psychological madness where the afflicted truly, deeply believed they had become wolves, to the point of digging up graves or howling at the night sky. And the highest religious and legal authorities furiously debated the exact nature of this terror. Take the writings of a Lutheran pastor named Einhorn, for example. The big debate was, is this a literal, physical transformation of bone and muscle, or is it a demonic plague infecting the mind? Einhorn, along with others, argued it was a demonic illusion designed to delude wretched people. But honestly, even if it was classified as an illusion, the terror it inflicted on the public and on the poor souls who believed they were trapped in a wolf's body was incredibly devastatingly real. Section 2. The Beast Within the Skin. 3 Terrifying Ideas. As we dig deeper into this dark history, we're going to explore 3 little-known but utterly terrifying historical concepts. Here's the first one, and it flips the script entirely. The Hollywood myth is all about that painful, bone-cracking physical transformation under a full moon, right? While the ancient reality is arguably way creepier. They believed the human body was merely a fragile carapace, like a shell, hiding the true savage wolf core inside. You weren't a human who turned into a wolf. You were a wolf walking around in a human suit. Your skin was just a disguise for the ravenous beast waiting to break free. And there were brutally grim consequences for this belief. Just look at this historical account from a 1541 trial in Padua, Italy.
A man accused of lycanthropy confessed, claiming he was indeed a wolf, but that his fur grew inwards, pointing toward his organs instead of outwards like a normal animal. And how did the magistrates respond? They literally hacked his arms and legs off to expose the fur they believed was growing on the inside of his flesh. He died from the mutilation. This was no fantasy to them. It was a physical, terrifying truth they felt they absolutely had to dissect.
Section 3. Souls Prowling the Night. Let's step further into the shadows for our second terrifying idea: soul projection. Instead of physically transforming, historical records, ranging from Norse berserkers to Baltic trials, reveal the belief that a sorcerer's body would enter a deep, death-like trance. While they were completely catatonic, their immaterial soul would project outward, taking the shape of a wolf to hunt in the night. It's a form of ancient shamanistic magic. But here's the real kicker. They believed in a sympathetic connection, meaning if a hunter struck or wounded that spirit wolf out roaming the forest, those exact wounds would miraculously and instantly appear on the sleeping human body miles away. And these projected souls were intrinsically linked to something even darker. Academic accounts of Baltic werewolves tie them directly to what texts call the unquenchable thirst of the dead. These spirit wolves, leaving their bodies, were essentially joining a nocturnal, spectral army. Driven by this primeval hunger, they crossed the boundaries between the living and the dead, seeking out cellars to drink mead or preying on livestock to satisfy a craving that their physical, sleeping body could no longer contain. Section 4. Earthbound Lupine Phantasms. Which brings us to the third and perhaps most haunting historical concept: werewolf ghosts. Because the horror didn't just end with physical death. Folklore across Europe warned that a person's wolf personality could actually separate from their human soul entirely. Because they were so deeply tied to animalistic cruelty, upon their physical dissolution, their lupine spirit would remain earthbound, trapped in our world as a vicious, shadowy, half-human apparition. So you weren't just dealing with a mortal danger anymore. You were up against an immortal, spiritual predator. These phantasms were definitely not just spooky stories to scare children into behaving. They were seen as the lingering, concentrated essence of human treachery and malice, stalking the dark corners of the world. They embodied pure, distilled cruelty. In historical haunted house accounts, witnesses claimed to see these half-beast, half-human forms gliding through the night. And their prey, they specifically targeted the vulnerable. We're talking outcasts, the cursed, and anyone foolish enough to wander the lonely woods after dark. Section 5. The Monster in the Mirror. So, after hearing all this, we finally have to ask ourselves, why? Why has this specific nightmare persisted across the globe and through the centuries? To truly understand the werewolf, we have to look inward and ask what portion of the human mind or spirit this creature actually represents. It isn't just an external monster. It's a mythological mirror reflecting our own internal architecture. Symbolically, it's a massive clash of ideals. On one hand, the wolf represents savagery, raw instinct, the unrestrained wilderness, and absolute lawlessness. On the other side, you have humanity, which prides itself on civilization, intelligence, law, and social order. So the werewolf represents the ultimate agonizing tension between our carefully constructed civilized order and the unrestrained violent instinct of the wild. It's a dark reminder that no matter how many laws we write or massive cities we build, we are intrinsically forever tied to the animal kingdom. The true horror of this explainer, the real takeaway here, is the realization that the werewolf is the ultimate psychological outsider. It represents the primal, violent shadow self that every single one of us desperately tries to keep caged. The ancients didn't just fear getting bitten in the woods. They were terrified by the fragility of their own humanity. They knew that under the right circumstances, hunger, madness, extreme rage, the civilized human mind could completely shatter, revealing the hungry beast that had been waiting there all along. So, As we wrap up and you leave this dark wood to step back into your modern, civilized life, I want you to take a long look in the mirror. Think about that ancient belief of the human carapace. Think about just how thin that fragile shell of civilization really is. Because if the werewolf is merely the repressed, instinctual beast hiding just beneath our skin, what is prowling inside of you right now? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, stay curious.